I had heard about the theater before, an old forgotten spot in the middle of the city. It wasn't the place you'd normally think to go for a movie night, but something about it intrigued me. When my friend suggested we check out a late-night screening of an obscure horror film there, I didn't hesitate. It was an experience, right? An adventure, even. We weren't exactly expecting much, but the eerie, almost haunted vibe of the place was undeniable as soon as we stepped inside. The lobby smelled of dust and stale popcorn. The walls were lined with old movie posters, some faded and torn as though they had been there for decades. We bought our tickets and headed into the theater. The place was nearly empty, just a few scattered people in the dark. The screen flickered to life with an old-school projector hum, and the film began. At first, everything seemed normal, but as the movie progressed, there was something off about it. The scene started to glitch, like the film was having trouble loading. The characters on the screen, they began to stare directly at us. I'm not talking about the actors in the movie, but the actual characters in the film. Their eyes locked on us, and that was impossible, right? It felt wrong, but none of us could look away. My friends and I exchanged confused glances, and the air in the theater turned thick, like it was pressing down on us. Then, one of my friends, Emily, suddenly stood up and walked toward the screen. I thought she was going to the bathroom, but she didn't come back. We called out for her, but there was no response. I felt a chill run down my spine as the rest of us started looking around. The lights flickered, the film glitched again, and for a split second I saw something, or someone, behind the screen. A shadow. I tried to get up, to find Emily, but the seats were suddenly different. They were more like traps now. I couldn't move. It was as though the theater was holding me in place, trapping me in my seat. Panic surged through me. I had to get out, had to find Emily, but every time I looked at the screen, the characters were staring at me more intensely, as if they knew what was happening, knew what was coming next. The lights flickered once more, and the movie abruptly ended. The theater went dark. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to move. Tried to scream, but the sound wouldn't come. That's when I realized the theater was silent now. No one was making a sound. My friends, Emily, they were gone. It was just me. And then, just before I could make a break for it, the projector kicked back on. The next film began, only this time, it wasn't a film at all. It was me. It was my face staring back at me from the screen. It wasn't an actor. It wasn't a scene from a movie. It was real. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat as I realized what was happening, what I had gotten myself into. This place wasn't just haunted. It was alive, and now it wanted me. The theater doors slammed shut. The only way out was through the screen. And it was closing in on me. It was late past midnight, and I was looking for a quiet escape. A midnight showing of a thriller at a small, almost empty theater seemed like the perfect way to unwind. The soft hum of the projector and the rustle of popcorn were the only sounds in the dark theater. I sat in the back row, comfortable in my solitude, as the opening credits rolled. But about halfway through the movie, I started to notice something odd. A man a few rows ahead of me was glancing over his shoulder every so often. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence. Maybe he was just adjusting in his seat. But then, he did it again. This time, his eyes seemed to linger on me for a little too long. I shifted uncomfortably. The theater wasn't crowded, and it felt like everyone was keeping to themselves. Then he stood up and started walking toward my row. My heart skipped a beat. There was something about the way he moved that didn't feel right. He wasn't just heading for the exit, he was coming closer. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. I quickly glanced around, hoping to spot someone else in the theater, anyone who could help, but there was no one. I could barely hear the movie now. It was drowned out by the pounding of my own heartbeat. The man stopped right next to my row and turned to face me. He didn't sit down. Instead, he leaned in slightly. His breath was cold as he whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. "You're the one who saw me, aren't you?" My stomach churned. I was frozen, unsure whether I'd heard him correctly or if it was just my imagination. But there was something about his tone that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. I didn't know what he meant, but I knew I had to get out of there. I tried to stay calm, reaching for my phone under my seat, texting the police without letting him see. I didn't dare make a sound. The last thing I wanted was for him to know I was trying to get help. It felt like the seconds dragged on forever, each one making my anxiety grow. And then, almost as if he had sensed my fear, he took a step back and turned to leave. I didn't move, still frozen in my seat, watching him go. As soon as he was out of sight, I stood up quickly, heart pounding in my chest, and bolted for the exit. I didn't care about the rest of the movie. I just needed to get out. The police arrived within minutes. I didn't know if the man had been watching me, or if he'd been watching others. But what I did know was that I'd had a close call. It turned out that man was a wanted fugitive. He had been on the run for weeks, and no one had noticed him hiding in plain sight at the movies. I still don't know if he recognized me from somewhere or if it was just some twisted coincidence, but I'll never forget the feeling of being watched, and I'll never look at a quiet theater the same way again. It was supposed to be a perfect night. Just me and my partner, sitting in the dark, watching a thriller we'd been dying to see. The theater was nearly empty, so we picked a cozy spot near the back. I remember thinking how nice it was to have the place almost to ourselves, just a few other people scattered around, the kind of quiet that felt almost personal. The movie started, and for the first few minutes, we were both glued to the screen. The sound was great, the plot was intense, just what we had hoped for. But then I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. A man, probably in his late 30s, was seated a few rows behind us. He wasn't just watching the movie. His eyes kept flicking to us, then back to the screen. It felt like he was trying to gauge if we were noticing him. I tried to shake it off. It was late and maybe I was just being paranoid. But then it happened. He leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "You two look like you're having a good time. I bet you're really into this, huh?" I froze. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My partner didn't seem to hear him, so I tried to keep my cool. Maybe he was just some guy who didn't know how to keep his thoughts to himself. "Yeah, it's a great movie," I muttered, not looking back. But he didn't stop. "You always watch films late at night, don't you? You like the thrill, the tension, the dark?" I felt a chill run down my spine. I turned slightly in my seat, glancing over my shoulder. He was sitting there, eyes locked onto me, a strange smile creeping across his face. There was something off about him, something that made my heart race. How did he know what we liked? What was this guy's deal? I didn't say anything at first, hoping he'd get the hint and leave me alone. But the whispers didn't stop. Every few minutes he would lean forward again, making comments that somehow felt too personal. He mentioned the restaurants we'd been to, places we'd talked about, even a vacation we'd taken months ago. At first, I thought I was just imagining it, but the more he spoke, the more it became clear. He knew us, or at least he knew things about us, things he shouldn't have. I glanced at my partner. His face was still focused on the screen, oblivious. I wanted to tell him to leave us alone, to say something, but I didn't know what to do. My mind raced. Was this some sort of sick joke? Or was this man following us? I shifted uncomfortably, trying to think of a way out of this situation. My heart pounded in my chest. That's when I noticed something else. The exits. I hadn't paid much attention to them before, but now they seemed too far away. My instinct was screaming at me to leave, but I didn't want to make a scene. I tried to ignore him, but his presence loomed over me, like a shadow I couldn't escape. That's when the whispers stopped. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the film, the muffled voices of the characters on screen. I thought maybe he had finally gotten the message and left, but then I felt it. His breath on the back of my neck, just a faint puff of air. I jumped, heart racing, and turned around to face him. He was still sitting there, eyes locked on mine, his smile now wide and unsettling. "You're not going anywhere, are you?" I didn't wait another second. I grabbed my partner's arm, whispering urgently for him to get up. We bolted for the nearest exit, my mind racing as I heard footsteps follow behind us. My heart was pounding, my head spinning. We made it outside into the cool night air, gasping for breath. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see him standing there, but there was nothing, just the empty street, lit by the dim glow of the theater's sign. I didn't tell my partner about what had happened until we were safely in the car. I didn't want to scare him, but I knew I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Whoever that man was, he knew far too much about us, more than anyone should. I never went back to that theater, and to this day, I can't shake the thought of that smile, and I still wonder, who was he? And how did he know us so well?